welcome to today's show, Sustainable Fashion in a Material World. This is a Canadian podcast, and I am your host, Sharon Lynn, and today I am here with guests from Humber College. Today's topic is greenwashing and corporate social responsibility in the fashion industry. First, I want to mention an important quote from Canadian environmental scientist and activist, Dr. David Suzuki. The human brain now holds the key to our future. We have to recall the image of the planet from outer space, a single entity in which air, water, and continents are interconnected. Let's start the conversation. Joining me are Khadija and Tiara, both undergrads from the Bachelor of Public Relations program.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for having me here, Sharon. To the listeners, my name is Khadija Black, and on this live show, we will talk about Canadian luxury fashion brands that are sustainable and which are not. And we need to do our part and choose harmless fashion.
Great. And before we jump into sustainable luxury, what were your favorite designer dresses at the American Music Awards?
So this year's American Music Awards had stunning luxury fashion. Like Cardi B had many wardrobe changes, but what stood out was the gold mask, the black dress with a veil and balconette bra, basically a strapless gown and black gloves by Cher Pirelli.
I really enjoyed singer-songwriter Olivia Rodrigo. She wore a sheer powder blue sparkly sequin David Coma dress embellished with blue feather trim.
One of my other favorites was musician Halle Bailey, who wore a Laquan Smith brown velvet diamond cutout dress with interlaced straps in the front.
Mine is model Winnie Harlow. She wore a Zuhair Murad gold jeweled mini dress dripping with chains.
And then Halle's sister Chloe wore a black velvet Monsoori dress with Jimmy Choo pumps as well.
And actress and producer Marseille Martin wore zigzag earth tones. It was a shimmery Missoni dress.
And Outer Banks star Madeline Klin had worn a diamond halter top, and the dress was cut out to the hip. It was a serious must-see black dress paired with elbow-length leather gloves.
Overall, I'd say the American Music Awards was a beautiful night. For our listeners, please tell us your favorite designer dress of the night at the 2021 American Music Awards and use the hashtag #HarmlessLuxury. Although some of those clothes were very precious, was it sustainable? I hope so. I really hope so.
Okay, well, could you tell us more about greenwashing, Tiara?
So greenwashing is putting on a false impression of helping the community and the environment. We came on this podcast tonight late, tired, and ready to pull off our eyelashes because we got a planet to save. We don't want to stop buying the brands we love. However, vendors and designers really need to take a new approach on their materials and production.
And could you tell me what corporate social responsibility is?
So corporate responsibility is essentially giving back, and sustainability is a conscious effort to reduce harm to the planet by human neglect and overconsumption of harmful products.
And how can audiences get involved in the conversation?
So listeners can use the hashtag #HarmlessLuxury and give us a shout. We will read your favorite harmless luxury brands on the next live. We need all luxury brand lovers to endorse this.
Great. And what do you think luxury brands can do to lower their environmental impact?
The use of pesticides on crops and chemicals during production, such as bleach or water recycling, has a negative impact on the environment. One of the most innovative ways to lessen the impact is through fabric changes, which go far beyond recycled and responsibly sourced organic textiles. Though both are ethically favorable, for example, a Global Organic Textile Standard certificate is a really good indicator for organic cotton and could be something designers take into consideration when they're designing clothing.
And what is the most ideal sustainable wardrobe or outfit pieces?
So overall, sustainability is not about just how and by whom our clothes are made, but also about the type of items you buy and how you treat them. So by purchasing a selection of cool basics and going less for seasonal trends, you're able to create a staple wardrobe of timeless pieces that you'd wear much more often. There's more bang for the buck, and there's more that you can do. Sometimes it's best to simply buy secondhand because not every piece needs to be spanking new. And then lastly, I would suggest recycle and upcycle those clothes that we simply don't want to wear out every day. You can turn old t-shirts into running shirts or cut out the legs of old jeans to turn them into work shorts and enjoy every piece a little longer.
And is the sustainable fashion movement classist in its exclusion of low-income individuals?
So overall, sometimes it is seen in these terms as so-called sustainable pieces are expensive with a high premium associated with ethics. And so sustainable fashion becomes beyond the reach of lower income earners. Yet once again, this is a narrow and reductive approach to both what fashion is and to issues around class. It is also a false assumption that ethical practices necessarily cost more. It's important to recognize that class doesn't just impact wealth, but also things like cultural capital. And so the question becomes about access to cultural capital, about connection with nature, communities, and sustainability practices.
And what problem does sustainable fashion try to address that hand?
So the problem sustainable fashion seeks to address is that a fashion sector currently behaves as if the finite resources that enable the fashion production and consumption are somehow infinite, and that the issues of social justice and inclusion are bad for business.
And how should people get involved in sustainable fashion? Do brands have a genuine intention to express help with sustainability concerns?
So listeners would ask questions, read labels, check what sustainable goals are on the company website or social. Notable Canadian brands are making ethical choices and they are watching their carbon footprints. There are so many ways to be fashionable and still shop with intention.
Great. And why do you think sustainable fashion is important to us Canadians?
Every year, Canadians throw away 3 million tons of plastic waste. 29,000 tons of that waste is found in the habitats of animals and our rivers and our lakes. Also, it has been reported Canada has a big carbon footprint. The amount of greenhouse gas emissions in 2019 were 730 megatons of carbon dioxide from our activities of daily living, like air travel, truck trailers, transportation, and factories.
Okay, what interesting facts. Who is on the radar for sustainable commitments or contributions that are not greenwashing?
Roots Canada, I applaud them. They are very awesome, and they are a Canadian company. Somebody give them a shout out. Use the hashtag harmless luxury and mention Roots. Give them a standing ovation emoji. They use recycled, reclaimed, non-toxic materials in the building of their stores. Roots supports the Waterkeeper Alliance in defense of rivers and lakes. Roots is one of the first Canadian companies to use organic cotton. Roots chooses suppliers based on their environmental practices, and they also make products from eco-friendly materials such as bamboo, hemp, and soya. They also avoid using harmful chemicals on clothes, and they're actively a member of the Organic Trade Association. So listeners, go on Twitter right now, hashtag #shoutout_roots if you agree with me.
So what luxury fashion brands would you say is actually greenwashing in 2021, Kate?
If we're just talking or looking at the facts here, and I would have to say, Sharon, Hudson Bay Company, my grandma's favorite pick for Christmas. However, I can't support all of their claims as being sustainable. Hudson Bay Company has production and vendors in China, India, and Bangladesh, which is a red flag. China alone has emitted 14 gigatons of CO2 carbon dioxide from manufacturing and nuclear factories in 2019. So Hudson Bay Company has vendors abroad transporting made in China goods to Canada is not local. It's a red flag.
But is it considered sustainable or greenwashing?
Like many luxury fashion brands claim to carry cruelty-free products. However, fashion that is not manufactured in Canada adds to the carbon greenhouse emissions because of the logistics. Just to transport items from abroad to Canadian stores has a mega carbon footprint. Hudson Bay reduced only 18% of their greenhouse gas emissions in 2020. However, they also announced they reduced most of their greenhouse gas, waste, plastic, cardboard, energy, and water because of the operational lockdowns due to the pandemic. Hudson Bay Company technically only reduced their greenhouse gas and waste because the people were dying all over the world in 2020. So is that even really sustainability?
I'm not sure. Let the listeners judge. How do you rate HBC for sustainability? Please use the hashtag harmless luxury.
What would you say are the positive actions Hudson's Bay Company is taking in sustainability?
That is a fair question. So Hudson Bay Company did switch the gift cards to 30% post-consumer fibers. Hudson Bay still carries plastic bags, but are encouraging reusable shopping bags. And on a side note that is not about fashion, Hudson Bay Company provided 1 million meals to Canadians with $500,000 in donations to Food Banks Canada and raised over $500,000 for charity in 2020, which is a very great contribution for us Canadians. Thank you, Hudson Bay Company, for looking out for your people.
Wow, and why do you care about this issue, Khadija and Tiara?
Luxury is about looking good, but sustainability is about having ethical practices that don't cause future harm to animals, nature, water, and the air we breathe. We want to look good, but the planet needs to be here for future generations.
And it may come as a surprise, but the fashion industry is one of the world's biggest polluters. It's actually second to oil. We all know that this causes a great impact on the environment, but it also creates terrible work conditions for the people who make these garments. By moving towards sustainable practices, there's opportunity for better working conditions, fairer pay, and less illegal sweatshops.
And can you name me some brands that are sustainable in Canada? And tell me, what are they doing differently?
So Canada Goose produces 100% of their clothes and gear in Canada. They are proudly Canadian and they are moving towards 90% of fiber material to be organic by 2025. They're also going for free next year. The brand is choosing 100% sustainable packaging solutions that are recyclable across manufacturing and direct consumer. On top of all of that, the standard parka uses 30% less carbon and 65% less water than their previous parka.
Great. So I'm sure you've heard of well-known Canadian brands like Aritzia and how popular they are for their versatility, trendy pieces, and fast fashion items. What are companies doing to maintain sustainability if fashion trends are seasonal?
So Aritzia is a very popular women's clothing brand for young adults, and it carries prices of around $50 for a simple top. They also boast excellent quality and sustainable practices during production. And to combat the vicious cycle of out-of-style pieces, they stick to a neutral color palette and provide outfitting options that are practical for years to come.
Okay, and we all know Canadians love the outdoors as well. What about sustainable outdoor clothing brands? So if pieces are worn out so quickly due to everyday wear and tear, wouldn't the company have to produce more raw materials, creating even more waste?
Yes, higher demand means more greenhouse gas emissions and more pollution in landfills. But outdoor apparel brands like Muttonhead, which guarantees fair trade practices, and they're produced locally. This brand is recognized for their practical lounge earth tones and patterns like camouflage and plaid. Muttonhead gear is thermal, which we need for Canadian weather, comfy, made with high quality materials, and the clothing is durable, like household vintage.
And what do you want the listeners to take from this interview?
Yeah, so we want the listeners who love luxury like we do to invest in those companies that care. Listeners, please use the hashtag #HarmlessLuxury on social media and let us know what your favorite sustainable luxury brand is so we can talk about it here live on the next episode.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Please subscribe to our podcast.
This episode was sponsored by Canada Goose, and we give thanks to our hosts, Sharon Lynn, and guest speakers, Khadijah Black and Tiara Budhoo. Also, music credits to the symphony music of La Bohème by Giacomo Puccini, 1896.